The Secrets of Doctor Who is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, episode 187.
One day, I shall come back.
That's it. I've been renewed.
Is when a Time Lord's body wears out, he regenerates.
I'm a Time Lord. I'm not a human being. I walk in eternity.
Braveheart.
Change, my dear, and it seems on a moment too soon.
Unlimited rice pudding.
Physician healers. Wearing a bit thin. Fantastic. I am Scottish. I can complain about things.
Ta-da! Ooh. Should be fine.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series Doctor Who, and today we're discussing the 6th Doctor story called Timelash. And joining me today on the panel is Jimmy Akin. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Father Cory is unavailable. He's traveling on the TARDIS this week, so we'll soldier on without him while he returns from, I think, the 11th century. In the meantime, and I hopefully he's with one of his favorite doctors and not one of the ones that he does not.
Not the one we're talking about today.
Yes. Folks, remember to, if you have not yet done so, please subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio. You don't have to do all of them. Just pick one. Or you could do it in your favorite podcast app or on the SQPN YouTube channel, where you should hit the bell to get notifications. Yeah, so we are talking about Timelash. This is a 6th Doctor story that aired in March of 1985. The second to last story of that season, I believe, the 6th Doctor's first season. And so it's
one of the least worst.
Exactly. I kind of liked the 2 Doctors that was the last 6th Doctor one.
I did not. But it had aspects that were fine.
Well, I was going to say what I liked about it was Patrick Troughton and Jamie McCrimmon.
Yeah, I like them.
But so this one is not as bad as it could be. I hate the damning with faint praise that we do with the 6th Doctor, but gosh, it's tough to really enjoy it. So, but let me give the recap of it, the one sentence recap, which is on the planet Carfel and in Scotland, 1885, the 6th Doctor and Peri, together with a young man named Herbert, who could he be, become entangled with the machinations of a despot called the Borad. Not Borat from somewhere in
Oh, yeah, no.
Asia.
This is totally Borat, Cultural Learnings for Make Benefit Glorious Planet Carfel.
Yes. So one of the things that keeps getting me every time we see the 6th Doctor and Peri is, why is she still traveling with this guy that she thinks is a jerk? And I kind of think it's sort of like it's like a relationship where you've had this wonderful girlfriend or boyfriend, and then they decided to move in together, and then that once wonderful boyfriend or girlfriend becomes a controlling jerk, but you keep hoping that they'll go back to being the way they were. And I kind of think that's what Peri is doing here. It's like she remembers the 5th Doctor and how nice he was.
Who actually died for her.
Right. And now she's kind of hoping that this incarnation of the Doctor is going to become nice again or something. I don't get it, but they just spend so much time bickering.
I think you have a very charitable interpretation there of that's what's happening. I think she's still traveling with the Doctor because that's what the show needs her to do.
Right.
And she's also bickering with the Doctor because they, for whatever reason, have wanted to have the 6th Doctor start out abrasive, and they need him to have someone to be abrasive with, and they don't know what else to do with Peri and the Doctor, and so they have them relentlessly sniping at each other. And in this one, Peri is kind of the aggressor. She, in the opening scenes in the TARDIS where they're talking about where they're going to go next, she's the one who's really kind of being a jerk about it more than he is.
Yeah, she accuses him of aimless wandering, and he gets mad. He says, fine, let's go back to London, 1985, or wherever it was he picked her up from, and drop you off right there if you're not so interested in aimless wandering.
So he calls her bluff, and she is indeed bluffing. It's like, oh well, now maybe not so quickly about all that.
Yeah, she does say that she's looking for a holiday. She wants to go on a vacation somewhere. That's where she's looking for something, and it does seem to me that there comes a point with a lot of the Doctor's companions where they want a holiday. They want to take them someplace where they can just hang out and relax. I remember Clara wanted that one, and
they all want
Donna.
That.
Yeah, they always end up they're going for a holiday and never end up having a nice holiday
wherever
they go.
Once they do. Actually, I can think of a couple of times. There's one that you haven't seen yet.
Okay.
Or no, maybe you have. It's the Fifth Doctor story, The Five Doctors, where Peter Davison's Fifth Doctor is just chilling at the Eye of Orion with Turlough and Tegan.
Okay, haven't seen that one yet.
At the beginning of the story. And actually, it's the Eye of Orion that comes up in this. It's a recurring thing that the Doctor was always talking about going to, and Peter Davidson's Doctor actually went there. But the other one that I can think of, which is even more famous because an adventure does not interrupt it for the companion, is Midnight, where they're on the planet Midnight, and Donna gets to just sit by the pool the whole episode, doing what she wants, chilling out and getting some UV rays and not that exotonic radiation, and then the Doctor is off on his own adventure.
That's true. Donna does get her holiday there. And speaking of successful, the Doctor and Donna, the 10th Doctor and Donna, is an example of how they don't have an abrasive relationship, but they have a fun contention,
playful teasing relationship.
Yes. Yeah. That's how they should have done this. It does a better production team would have done it than what we get here. So So we have them looking for a place to go. Yeah.
Yeah. So as typical in an early on in a Doctor Who adventure of this year, we cut back and forth between what's happening in the TARDIS and the place they're going to end up. Let's just go ahead and spoil a few things. So Herbert, the guy they pick up in 1885 Scotland, is H.G. Wells.
Yes.
And they don't really bring that out until the very end. But it turns out the Doctor knows it's H.G. Wells because he dropped a card with his full name on it. And the Doctor has not made a big deal out of it, which I like. I like if we're going to have a famous historical person on here, we don't have, oh, Mr. Wells, I've read all your books. I'm such a big, huge fan. It's just treating him like a normal guy is much more to my taste. But we do have the trope implicitly, and they don't make a big deal out of it, which is also nice. But we have the trope of this is what inspires H.G. Wells' sci-fi novels. So this story has references that are going to be used in The Time Machine, The War of the Worlds, The Invisible Man, and The Island of Dr. Moreau.
Right.
And so it's setting up all that. Implicitly, it's setting up all those H.G. Wells novels. Interestingly, even though we're not given any date in the story for when this is happening, it's apparently just far future. In the A History of the Universe, which is an unofficial history of the Doctor Who universe, they are arbitrarily placed in the year 8002 701. So 802,701, which is the year that H.G. Wells' time machine visits in his novel.
With the Eloi and the Morlock.
And the Morlocks, Oh, in total, we have Morlocks in this episode, although they're not degenerate humans. They're like brontosauruses. They're carnivorous brontosauruses.
Yes.
Also, there's an actor in this. So like in the two Doctors, which we did last time with the Sixth Doctor, we had an actress who I identified as Servalan from Blake 7.
Yes.
She was the big bad for Blake 7. Well, another person that was on Blake 7 was an actor named Paul Darrow, who appears in this episode as a character named Tecker, but he's more famous for being Avon on Blake 7. Originally, Avon was like Blake's second in command, and then when Blake left the show, he became the primary hero, but he's an anti-hero.
Right.
He's like sinister and menacing, but still on the side of good. And so last time we had Servalan, the big bad. Now we've got Avon. And apparently, according to various sources, Paul Darrow deliberately overplayed his role and was like more villainous in this than he otherwise would have been as payback to Colin Baker. Because, and I've seen this, there's an episode of Blake 7 where Colin Baker, a young Colin Baker, he's not yet the Doctor, a young Colin Baker guest stars as a minor bad who's like he's on for one episode as a villain. He's like a galactic war criminal known as Babin the Butcher, or Babe, as his mom called him. And he is like totally evil. And he was very flamboyant and over the top in his badness in that episode of Blake 7. And so to get back at him in this, Paul Darrow, as the walk-on villain of the week in Doctor Who, is like scene stealing from him.
Oh, funny. Yeah, he was. Yeah, I gotta say, Tecker was pretty over the top.
Yeah.
So we start off with this an apparently airless planet, because you can see the horizon with stars at night all the way down to the horizon. You know, so there's no. It looks like you're on a moon of some sort here.
I love how you're over-sciencing a budgetary special effects limitation.
I do. I know. I have to do it. It's clearly a fan thing to do. So you have these three young people running down corridors, as we do, trying to escape from armed guards and beekeeper helmets.
The mushroom beekeeper men. They were cool. They have these upside down salad bowls on their heads with like beekeeping mesh underneath it. It makes them look like mushrooms with arms.
Yes. I think they show up later in the Force Awakens, actually, the Star Wars.
Do they?
Yes. Well, it's a very similar outfit on some sort of policeman on Jakku in the background. So, but it's very similar. So there's something they talk something about escaping the Citadel to join rebels and avoid being thrown into something they call the Timelash, and then, as you said, we were jumping back and forth. So back on the TARDIS, the Doctor says they're unavoidably colliding with a time tunnel that's connected from some place to 1179 AD on Earth. So something is drawing the TARDIS unavoidably into it.
Yeah, this is a Contron time tunnel, and what makes it Contron is apparently the fact it's done with 8-bit animation.
Yeah. Yes, that is
really, really primitive animation.
Yes. It's a little rainbow thing going on. So back on the planet, one of the young guys is caught and fitted with a collar. The other guy is grabbed by a guard, and it turns out he betrayed the others. And the girl that they were with is zapped by a big blue guy who apparently is
big blonde blue robot.
Yes,
so he's 3 Bs, big blonde and blue.
Yes, there's an android of some sort. Who he takes her before the Borad, who is apparently the leader, who says he is her master, although she doesn't recognize him. So we immediately get this sense of the Borad is not who the people think he is, and then he zaps her and she dies. So she's immediately dead for having seen his actual fate. So meanwhile, we have a couple, a man and a woman, who are debating each other in this council room over the Borad, and the man says the woman says he's a fine leader, and the man says he's negligent and only interested in his time experiments. So we have the time element going on here. They're apparently counselors who are gathering to put the two captured guys on trial.
Yeah, he also criticizes other aspects of Borat's leadership. One of them is that he never appears except on screen, so he's kind of hands-off, but it's like, That's leader fair. Who never appears except on screen. What other Doctor Who serial have I recently seen that featured exactly that concept?
Yes.
Oh, it was the Macra Terror. And guess what? The leader, the actual leader did not look anything like the image that appeared on screen. That was a fake. Guess what's going to happen in this episode? Also, there's another race that we haven't seen yet that they are apparently in danger of going to war with. And that's another criticism of Borat's leadership, is he's going to get us into a war with these people, and we don't need that.
Yes. So these two...
and they're having a civil war themselves. That was
right.
the other criticism.
The rebels that they were going to. Yes. These two rebels, or these two young men who were going to find the rebels, including one who betrayed the others, they're convicted in a show trial, and they're sentenced to being put in the Timelash, which is apparently this time corridor that the Doctor has been talking about. And so the big blue blonde android, the BBB android, throws the two rebels
3B.
into the time corridor.
3BA.
3BA, yes, the 3BA.
Yeah.
He's a droid. So they get thrown into the time corridor. And I'm not sure, does this mean that they're being sent to 1179 AD on Earth, or they get stuck in there?
No, this is the weeping angel punishment. They could do the same thing if they just had a weeping angel and let it touch people who were condemned criminals. Right. It's just sending them back to this year as a form of exile.
Wow. Yes, that would be from 800,000 AD to 1179. That would be a big culture shock. Yeah. So the head judge is called the Malin, and that's apparently the leader of the people just one step below the Borad.
Right.
The female counselor is Vina, his daughter, and the man who was talking to Vina earlier is Mikros, who is her fiancé.
Yeah. Oh man, what a humiliating name, Mikros.
Mikros?
I mean, in Greek it means little.
Hey, little man. And the planet is called Carful.
Yes, and the inhabitants, they don't tell us the name of the planet first. They tell us the name of the inhabitants. They refer to them as Carfelons. And I'm going, wow, Grand Theft Auto is an identity marker.
Wow, it just would start off one step behind. So Mikros follows the Malin to where they can't be monitored, some room, which the Malin says the monitoring can't work in there because it would mess with the instruments. And that's apparently unheard of. They're so it's Big Brother everywhere. And they discuss overthrowing the Borad despite their outward appearances of support. But Malin says, no, it's impossible. We can't do it. So I don't want to support you. Not because I don't want to, but because it can't work.
Yeah, well, he says it's not the right time. So he's open to overthrowing the Borad in the future, but just not yet.
Right. Now, Malin's job appears to involve routing power to the Borad, who has also, incidentally, by the way, banned mirrors for some reason, which will become clear later. And the latest
lame reason that will become clear later.
Exactly. Well, I kept thinking of that Steve Martin routine about the when you're holding hostages, you demand $1 million, a plane to fly me anywhere, and the letter M stricken from the English language because you always got to have a crazy demand like $1 million
for your crazy demand for your insanity defense later.
Yes. I mean, just we have to ban mirrors. Sure, why not? Okay, let's ban mirrors. Everyone has bad hair days. So the latest power routing order down from the Borad is that everything has to be routed to the Borad, including hospital power, which
everything
will kill
except the Timelash power.
Yes. And this we are told, will kill the Malin's wife, who just had surgery and is on life support, but he must do it anyway, because what else can you do?
He's hoping she'll survive, that she'll be strong enough. But yeah, there's a good likelihood it's going to kill lots of people in the hospital, including his own wife, who we never see. Yeah,
right. She's totally off screen. And so we have not only how evil the Borad is, but how broken the people are down so to obey him, so that we've got that example. So it turns out that even in this place where they're not supposed to be able to be monitored, the Borad is actually monitoring them, and so the Borad calls Malin to a meeting, which is going to be bad. He's about to be fired. That's just totally it. Meanwhile, the Doctor and Peri...
Fired in a somewhat literal sense.
Yes. The Doctor and Peri, in a series of interspersed scenes, so it doesn't all happen at once, are trying to avoid the bad effects of a Contron tunnel, which is making them look all weird and distorted and talk like they've been sucking on helium.
Yep.
Which is
they
amusing.
get to wear safety belts.
Yes.
The first time ever they yank out safety belts and strap themselves to the TARDIS console and then stand as far back from it as possible to keep from being flung around. And actually, this is not a very good safety belt design because you could easily slam your face into the TARDIS console.
Yeah.
You need at least airbags for this to work. But that's kind of cool.
It would need a 4-point harness. This is a 2-point harness. It's 2 spots on the ground, which means it creates a great lever action, so you can go forward and backward, like as much as you want, smashing your face in the back of your head on everything. Mm-hmm. You need at least a 4-point harness to keep you stable. Or, a chair with a seatbelt. That might be good. So, like I mentioned, the Malin is confronted by the Borad for his treason, and the Borad... without showing his face, by the way. We never see the Borat's face until near the end.
Right. We only see him on the screen. And on the screen, he looks like this kindly old man who nevertheless makes irrational demands.
Yes.
And the kindly old man is the same actor who plays Professor Chronotis from Shada.
Oh, that's why he looked familiar.
And he's also the keeper of Traken, which is a story you haven't seen yet, Dom.
Yeah.
And he, in I, Claudius, he plays the historian Livy.
Okay.
So he's a familiar old man face.
Yes.
Who's kindly and reasonable and makes insane demands. But I like how here the Borat explains to the Malin how he was able to monitor the thing. And he's got this overcomplicated explanation. It's actually more complicated than we need. But he says, a microphone was inserted on the black-scented amulet. And the amulet he's got in his hand because he was using it to transfer the power. And so this is the black-scented amulet. But since we can see that it is not black, it is not both black and scented. It must be scented of the color black. So the Borat has some serious synesthesia cross-connecting his olfactory and visual senses because he can smell black.
Yeah, I was going to say the synesthesia is present there. So, so the Borat says, very nice, and shoots the Malin and turns him into, quickly ages him into a skeleton.
I know, and I kind of admire, but also find it hilarious the way this effect works. Because he zaps him with a ray, and all of a sudden there is a skeleton standing in his clothes, and it just crumples to the ground.
Yes.
It's just like in an instant, clunk, and it's on the ground. And it folds as it does so, which of course it would. It's not like going to just be rigid and fall over.
Yeah.
That might even be a little more hilarious. But just the way it folds in half and falls to the ground all in an instant, it looks like the cheap special effect it is, and I can't really fault it because if you did turn someone into a skeleton in their clothes, it would probably look something like that.
Right.
And act something like that. So I can't fault it on logic grounds. It's just simultaneously goofy. So I love this. I have cognitive dissonance with it.
And it's so evil supervillain. Like you could just shoot a guy. You could just bang, you're dead, But no, we have to use the overly complex, the overly over-the-top weapon to kill the henchman that we want to get rid of. It's very Bond supervillain there. So meanwhile, Vina, the Malin's daughter, is told her father had a fatal seizure, and by the way, your fiancé is to be thrown into the Timelash.
Oh, and your father was a traitor too. So well, why did you tell me he had a fatal seizure 30 seconds ago? Why didn't you just tell me he was a traitor?
Right. And a new Malin has been chosen, Tecker, that you mentioned
Avon,
before.
yay.
Yes. And so Vina, upon being told about this, she grabs the amulet from Tecker, the new Malin, and jumps into the Timelash herself. Because the amulet is the key to the Borat's power, quite literally. If they don't have it, they can't send him power.
I think she more is threatening to throw it in if they don't let good stuff happen, and then she falls in. It was my interpretation.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. That could be. It could have floated by me pretty quick.
But it turns her into a ghost, and she gets to briefly haunt the TARDIS as it's going through the Chronoton time tunnel, and she's going through it in the other direction on her way to now 1885 because the TARDIS has dislodged the other end of the time tunnel.
Yes, Peri sees her and wants to help her, but they can't, because the TARDIS is out of control and it materializes on Carful. Mm-hmm. So the Malin quickly deduces that the TARDIS can help them retrieve the amulet before the Borad punishes them all for their madness.
Because he knows who the Doctor is. This is something that starts coming out. Even the Borad is like, "Oh, the Doctor, my old foe. We will meet again." And
yes,
Avon remembers who the Doctor is, and so we learned that the Doctor has been here before, which is nice because it explains how they're able to come up with this plan so quickly.
Yes,
they are already familiar with these concepts,
right? And what we have is an explanation that he came as the third Doctor with Joe Grant in a story that has never actually been seen on film. So it's not like we're like revisiting an old planet that we saw in the third Doctor's time. This is a completely like they're making this up as an off-screen adventure that the third Doctor had.
Which is nice. It's we often hear about off-screen adventures like, oh, that time I met so-and-so, the famous person from history. They often mention them, but we don't see the follow-up.
Right.
We don't see evidence like this. We do occasionally. This happens, for example, in Tom Baker's era, where he's had an off-screen, it's the first Leela story, The Face of Evil, where he comes to this planet and he has forgotten he's been here before, but in his previous adventure, he made such an impression that they thought he was a god, and they've carved this face into Tom Baker's face as it's the face of evil. And when he first meets Leela, she's like, oh, the evil one. And he's like, would you like a jelly baby? It's true, the evil one eats babies.
That's funny.
But we do occasionally get this kind of Doctor off-screen cross-pollination where it has more of a consequence like this. And I like that. Also, it wasn't just Joe Grant that he was with, because when he and Peri first step out of the TARDIS, Avon is talking to them and he's like, oh, traveling light this time, Doctor.
Right.
Because you've just got the one companion.
Yeah.
And the Doctor says, yeah, whatever, just got the one companion right now. And so that tells us that he had other people with him the first time he visited, and the logical people for him to have taken with him would have been unit people.
Yep.
So it wasn't just Joe Grant, it would be like Captain Yates and Sergeant Benton and people like that were also along for that one.
Okay. It would be, again, another one of those things that Big Finish could do is to fill in the gap, but apparently they haven't.
Not yet.
So, meanwhile, while they're having some refreshments with the Malin, Peri is admiring some of the plants, including some that are particularly deadly. And then, just out of nowhere, Android...
The acid face plant.
Yes. Why would you keep that in your
office if it sprays acid at people who lean close to admire it? Fortunately, it doesn't do that to Peri, but we're told it could have.
Yes, and we'll get somebody else later. But at this point, one of the three BAs, okay, I have to get that down right. The 3BA comes in, grabs Peri's necklace, and walks off with it, like pulls it off her neck for some reason. But she does say it's her St. Christopher medal, which seems appropriate for a companion of the Doctor.
Yeah, if you're going to be traveling, you probably want some assistance from the patron saint of travelers.
Exactly.
So that's nice. It also means Peri is likely Catholic, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But I know the way the android just comes in and yanks her chain and walks off,
literally
for no reason, is amazing. And they kind of hang a lantern on it to say, oh, he was probably wanting to warn you about the acid face plant. But he didn't warn her about the acid face plant. He stole her St. Christopher medal. He could have come on and said, and by the way, my 20th century speech synthesizer on my computer is much better than the speech synthesizer on this Android.
Yes.
Because he is, and it's an actor doing it, but it's a terrible speech synthesizer. He could have come up and said, I'm sorry, ma'am, please lean back from the dangerous office plant.
Right. Now, keep in mind, this is 1985. This is just about the time we get Data on the Star Trek Next Generation, also an android. A much better android, I have to say. The reason in my head, I figured it must be why he grabbed the necklace is maybe it's reflective, and you can't have reflective surfaces.
But it's
she was
St.
saying
Christopher metal. It's not a mirror. It's not even the reflective surface of a normal wine goblet.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, she points out that everything is matte. Nothing is even reflective. Never mind shiny with where you can see reflection. I don't know. Nothing sparkly. It was a weird blip in the episode where they must have intended it to mean something and forgot to follow through.
I have to say, Peri has remarkable aesthetic sensibilities because not only does she know what the word matte means and is comfortable using it in a sentence. I mean, unless you're in publishing or something, most people don't know what matte finish is.
Yes.
Matte is like a dull finish as opposed to a glossy finish.
Yes. Unless you paint a lot.
If you paint, you learn about that. Or if you're in publishing, you know it because different paper stocks have different kinds of finishes.
Right.
But she not only knows this term and uses it in conversation, she picks up on the fact that everything in her environment is that.
Yes.
And it's like, I would not have. It's like, hey, where's all the shiny things? I mean, how often do I think that to myself?
Right. So they do, everything's lifeless. And they're having this conversation about where nothing's sparkly. When a man runs in, shoves a piece of paper in Peri's hand and runs out.
Runs out.
It's like,
which is actually kind of, you're at least defeating part of the surveillance society because you didn't say anything to her. Of course, it doesn't help if you then read the note out loud in front of the security camera.
Well, and it also looks really suspicious on camera.
Yeah, that you're not getting the visual part of this. You still need to work on that.
What did Bob do there? What did he hand to that alien that had just showed up? Well, the note says meet Cezanne at the Falchian Rocks, which sounds like a rendezvous to me. So that's what they decide that must be what it is, or it's a fortune cookie, but one or the other. So the Malin Tecker comes back and says a tour of the Citadel has been arranged. Peri, she has no choice. She's going on the tour. It's a ruse to separate her from the Doctor and kill her. Peri doesn't want to go, but the Doctor insists.
And this seems to me to be a flaw in the new Malin's plans because what he wants to do is, and the excuse is, oh, we're going to have you go off on this tour, Peri, so the Doctor and I can talk business.
Right.
And the business that he wants to talk about is, okay, that ghost lady you saw whiz through the TARDIS in the time tunnel had a rather important amulet of ours that we need to get back. And so she's in 1885, and we want you to go there and get the amulet for us. And so that's the business. And it's like, well, why would I want to do that? Well, because I'm holding Peri as a hostage in order to blackmail you. So you need to go do this. But except he's already given orders to have the hostage killed.
Right.
And it's like, what? Do you understand how blackmail works?
Yeah, I mean, if you kill the hostage,
you lose your levering power. You lose your leverage. You may need to, if you want him to believe that the hostage is still alive and thus that you still have power over him, you need to be able to produce the hostage in the future. You don't start by killing the hostage. Maybe you do that, but only after you have what you want. Killing the hostage as your first step just kind of defeats the purpose of blackmail.
Well, meanwhile, the Doctor, before they even got off the TARDIS, had told Peri, don't leave my side. This is a dangerous environment. Don't leave me at any point. And the first thing he does is, go take the tour. Okay. Which the first advice was apparently a good advice because they're going to try to kill her. So he threatens Peri to get him to do this, going to search for Vina. The guard with the beekeeper helmet on totally muffs the job, and Peri gets away by shoving the acid face plant in his face.
Yeah,
and she escaped.
And it acids him.
Yes, yes. Chekhov's acid face plant. Movie. So she escapes through a door, just a convenient door, into a cavern, and encounters in
a canyon with his daughter Clementine, or at least a bunch of rebels.
Right. Well, first she meets the Morlocks, and her first impulse is to scream, because why not?
I love how the Morlocks are carnivorous brontosauruses.
Yes, which are very slow to bite, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm going to menace you. Meanwhile, they're in a Victorian cottage. A young man, Herbert, is doing some sort of Ouija board-like activity when Vina appears.
He is. I mean, it's not a literal Ouija board, but he is using... It's like a Ouija board. It performs the same function. He is attempting to conduct a seance and contact the spirits using... I forget if this version of it is technically called a planchette or not. But he's got, like, the letters of the alphabet arranged around the table, and he's got a wine glass upside down in the middle of the table that he's moving to different letters.
Right. It moves on its own, which is, and he's kind of surprised by it.
Yeah.
And that's when Vina arrives, asks for help, and collapses.
And he assumes she's a spirit that's materialized, which is awesome.
So Peri's still screaming in the cavern when some people show up and shoot the Morlocks, and suddenly a burning android appears out of nowhere and collapses. And I like the fact that they don't really explain this. At first, it feels like you've totally forgotten to tell us what this was about. But it actually comes up later. So I'm kind of glad that they don't blow the
wibbly wobbly timey wimey.
Yes,
even though it's the 1980s.
That's right. So the rebels want to kill her as a spy, but one woman, one of the rebel women, questions her first. And when Peri mentions the doctor, the woman shows a locket. She says the doctor gave her grandfather. It has a photo of Joe Grant and a bit of Joe's hair, which feels really creepy. Like, why did this grandfather get this locket from the doctor?
Well, she hadn't met that guy from the Nut Hutch yet and married him and gone off to the Amazon. Maybe she had a romance on this planet.
Could be. And she asked the doctor to give it to this young woman's grandfather. So the doctor, meanwhile, has figured out that Vina is in 1885. That's at this point, he realizes where she is.
By the way, in the original draft of this script, and I don't know why they changed this because I don't see any special reason why it needed to be changed, although I can guess why they did it. Originally, it was not going to be the third Doctor and Joe and Unit.
Yeah.
Originally, it was going to be the first Doctor with Ian, Barbara, and Susan.
Oh.
And so that might have been a locket of Susan.
Interesting.
If they had kept that. I suspect, if I had to guess the reason they changed it, it's because the kids watching this in the 1980s would have had a greater chance of knowing and recognizing the third Doctor from the 1970s than the first Doctor from the 1960s.
Right. Yeah, that would be going back more than 20 years at that point. So, meanwhile, as you mentioned, Vina wakes up in the cottage and is introduced to Herbert, who thinks she's a spirit come through the spirit world. And Herbert says he's a writer and a teacher. Ooh. They hear the TARDIS materializing, and Vina, at this point, asks him for help. So Herbert grabs a crucifix and a Bible to get rid of the unwanted spirit who's arrived, and confronts the Doctor, who just basically pushes him off.
I love how when the Doctor is ignoring him and turns his back on H.G. Wells, he takes the Bible and tries to hit the Doctor in the head with the Bible, but the Doctor just moves out of the way without even seeing it.
Yeah, he just kind of ducks him. Herbert is completely ineffective here, HG. So meanwhile, the rebels tell Peri that the Bandril, the aliens
they're the rubber cobra head skull people.
Yes, they're the
hand puppets.
They're hand puppets. The Muppets are coming to attack them. They were the former allies.
Yeah, and the puppet looks like a skeletal version of a cobra, kind of.
Yeah. So they apparently have a weapon that can destroy anything with a central nervous system while leaving infrastructure untouched, which sounds a lot like a neutron bomb.
Yep.
Is that even a thing anymore? Neutron bombs? I remember back in the 80s they were really scary. Big.
Well, and in the 70s too. I mean, we do have neutron bombs. They don't get as much attention as they used to.
Nobody talks about them. Interesting.
Well, people don't talk about nuclear weapons as much as they used to in general.
Yeah, that's true. But Peri recognized. I think she kind of says, "Oh, that sounds familiar." When she hears the weapon, so that it was a thing. She realizes that the man is saison, which is a type of nice session beer that you can drink. A saison. I just every time I heard his name, I kept thinking, I'd like a nice saison beer, right? And so they're at the Falchian Rocks. And then she goes to look for the note to show them, look, someone gave me this note to come meet you, which is just as the Citadel guards arrived, because when she was fighting with the guard earlier, the note fell out of her pocket, and she left this evidence of where the rebels are laying around for them to find. So that the guards have arrived and start shooting people and taking people captive.
And the Borad has given orders that Peri is not to be harmed for some reason.
Ooh, she's got spunk. That's what it is. He likes her spunk.
Think it's more than spunk he's after. But.
Right. So the Doctor, but meanwhile, has explained how the time machine, the TARDIS, works to Herbert, who will turn, like we said, turn to be H.G. Wells. He convinces Vina to let him return the amulet in order to help him save her people and defeat the Borad. She wanted to keep it away from him, but the Doctor says, "Trust me, we'll fix this up if you give me the amulet." And grabs a mirror from HG's cottage before they go. That'll be important later. He says, "Herbert, you can't come with me," but Herbert stows away somehow on the TARDIS.
One of many who've done that.
Yes. Well, Herbert has this very, I don't know what it is, this thing where he just will not go away and won't take a hint. This guy just keeps disobeying everything the Doctor tells him.
Well, so for someone who's destined to make a career writing science fiction novels, could you expect him to do anything other than glom on to this opportunity?
That's true. This is true. So the Doctor ends up handing over the amulet to the Malin, but the Malin refuses to hand over Peri, of course.
And there's one of the most famous bits of Sixth Doctor dialogue in this scene, where he, as this is like the classic Sixth Doctor insult. It comes from this scene where I believe he says it to Malin, but he refers to him as "you microcephalic apostate." And so, okay, let's think about that.
Yeah.
Microcephalic, so that means you got a tiny brain, or yes. The old term for someone with microcephaly is a pinhead.
Okay. And
then apostate. I love how Colin Baker does not know how to pronounce the word apostate. An apostate is a person who has fallen away from a position they should hold. Right. So, like, if you say, "Oh, I'm not a Christian anymore," well, then you're an apostate Christian. If you say, "I'm not a Muslim anymore," you're an apostate Muslim. If you say, "I'm not a Democrat anymore," you're an apostate Democrat. Whatever you've fallen away from, you're an apostate from that. And so he's saying he's an apostate, or an apostate from something we don't know what it is. And presumably his microcephaly led him to do that.
Yes, he's a pinheaded apostate Carphalon.
Yeah.
Maybe. Carphalon. Maybe.
So, don't know what he's an apostate from, but very interesting nonsensical insult.
Yes. So the rebels and the others are about to be cast into the Timelash, and so the androids, the Doctor's first, so he grabs the Doctor by the neck and frog marches him over to the Timelash, but the Doctor takes out Herbert's mirror and shows it to the android, who backs away from it. Like Frankenstein. Oh, too horrible to behold. I'm not sure why the android reacts this way.
Because the script needs him to.
I guess, because this is not why the mirrors have been banned. We find out later, but the rebels and Mikros take the opportunity to overpower the guards, and they throw one of the other counselors and the android into the Timelash, where they will end up, where the
in 1885.
Yeah, well, is it going to 1885 still?
I believe so. They will later readjust it to go back to the 1100s.
So either the 12th century or the 19th century is about to get a big blue blonde android show up, which should be fun. The Doctor now gets them to lower him into the Timelash, which turns out not to be a time tunnel full of energy, but a big room full of crystals.
Yeah,
apparently.
Full of the Giant's Causeway, actually.
Right. With little crystals growing out of the end of them. So his task is to grab these little crystals, and there's this long sequence of him slipping, and he's tied onto a rope, and the others are lowering him down, and he's trying to grab the crystals carefully, and Herbert has to climb in after him, and then Mikros does too.
This one goes on for a little long.
Yes, way too long. They get out successfully. Meanwhile, the Malin tells the Borad over a comm device, some sort of communication device, that he's got an important message that can only be given in person. And this Malin, Tecker, is much more guileful and smooth than the previous one. This one's very much a politician making his way up the ladder, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So in Borat's vault, the android, you see the android helping an old man, the old man from the screen that we talked about before, who speaks for Borad.
But he's got wires sticking out of the back of his head, so we know he's an android too.
Yes, or
he's
at least
not
he's
big
a human,
and blue.
or he's a human being who's
he's got a much better speech synthesizer. Oh, that hadn't even occurred to me. I just assumed he was an android because of the wires.
Yeah, I was wondering if they just taken this kindly old man and turned him into the face of the Borad.
Ooh, that's a little dark.
Yeah. Well, the Borad does turn people into skeletons, so we've already gone there. So, meanwhile, talk about dark. Peri is being kept in a cell where she's attached to the wall by her neck and can't sit down without choking herself to death. Yeah. And she's got this contraption strap. Yes. Although you get tired after a while.
Well, you could lean on the pipes behind you.
Right. They put this contraption on her, this canister of some sort that's strapped to her chest, and we don't know what that is yet. We'll find out. Inside the Borat's vault, the Malin falsely blames this guy that he's been walking with, this other counselor, who's been saying, "Oh, I'm going to ask him to name you my deputy. Oh, yes, just come along with me. This is very important." And this guy's like, "I don't really want to go." No, come along. They go in, he goes, "This guy's responsible for what the doctor has been doing. He's the traitor." And so he's killed because the Borat's an idiot.
And so is the junior guy. He got to go along with him.
Yes.
And that guy is not responsible for what the doctor has been doing. This was all just a blind, as they used to say, to throw the Borat off the track of the Malin.
Yes.
Oh, these names are difficult.
Yes. So the Borat has now revealed his face to the Malin, Tecker, but hasn't killed him. He's the first one he hasn't killed for seeing his face. The doctor is building something out of pieces of the Timelash and the crystals. He
builds two things.
Yeah.
One is a kind of gun, and this gun will absorb stuff like energy that is fired at it and hold it for 10 seconds and then release it back.
Yes.
And the other thing he builds is a necklace that will basically phase shift him 10 seconds. So you'll see his image standing in one place where he's actually moving somewhere else for 10 seconds invisibly, and then 10 seconds later his image catches up with him.
Right.
And so it gives him 10 seconds. It's basically 10 seconds of invisibility with an image dummy over there to attract people's attention.
Right. Yeah, he pushes some people around while he's invisible. And then, he has also the third device, which is a scope that allows the person using it to see both his image and his actual self, in the 10 seconds apart.
And that plays no useful function other than it allows in one scene the audience to understand a little bit better what they're seeing and not seeing in front of them.
Right. So he's going to use this gun that absorbs the energy. And it doesn't send it 10 seconds. It sends it. How is it? It absorbs the energy and time slips whatever it's aimed at back at the attacker. It sends it back an hour into the past. Right. So that waits 10 seconds to shoot.
Right.
And then it will send whatever it shoots 10 seconds back into the past. I mean, an hour into the past. And this explains the android that appeared in the tunnel burning because he shoots an android, it catches on fire, and goes back an hour.
Burning Android goes on to become a really popular festival.
Yes, the Burning Android.
All the hip people go there.
Yes, in the caverns. So when the guards attack, a wall panel behind the doctor is destroyed, and a painting of the third doctor is seen underneath. Herbert says, "Oh, you've changed a bit," and the doctor replies, "Immeasurably for the better, it seems." Which another one of these, and not a moment too soon. Bits from the Sixth Doctor. I think he's got a little too big of an opinion of his own looks. Let's just say that. Meanwhile, the Bandrills, which sounds like an 80s girl band.
They play at Burning Android every year.
Oh, well, I could do that. That's a good gig for them. So the Bandrill invasion force is approaching, and it looks like the Borat wants the Bandrill to kill everyone on the planet but him and the Morlocks. So we don't know how this is going to work, but the Morlocks do not have a central nervous system, and so they're going to survive. Everything that has one will
they
die.
They clearly have a central nervous system, as does the
Borat.
As does the Borat.
Yes. So the doctor goes to the Borat's vault where he confronts him. It turns out that the Borat is half human, half Morlocks, literally, like down the middle.
Yeah,
like one half of his face,
not entirely even, but basically straight down the middle. Yeah. And so this is great. He was doing experiments involving some dangerous chemical. The doctor recognizes him, by the way, from his pre-hybrid state. He was apparently a scientist when the doctor was here before named Magellan, which is an anagram of Mengele, the Nazi doctor, and who did experiments. And so he was doing an experiment with some dangerous chemical, and one of the Morlock brontosauruses attacked, and the chemical merged the two of them, so now he's half brontosaurus.
Yes.
But that means it's hard. So that means he's got some body image issues. He doesn't have the most positive body image, and that's why he's banned mirrors for everyone.
Right.
Not just in his zone, but nobody gets a mirror. And apparently he's programmed the androids to be terrified of mirrors too, instead of just confiscating them.
Yep.
And what he really wants, now that he's incredibly intelligent because it boosted his intelligence and his strength and his lifespan, so he now will live 12 times longer than normal. He really wants a girlfriend. That's just really what he wants. And so he's going to make Peri his girlfriend. But she needs to be an adequate girlfriend. So she needs to get the Brontosaurus treatment too. So that's why they've strapped this tank to her. I mean, it's like an air tank or water tank. It turns out it's filled with this chemical, and that's why he's got her down in the caves being menaced by a Brontosaurus. So at some point, when the Brontosaurus attacks, the chemical will release, and she and the Brontosaurus will merge, and then she can be the Borat's girlfriend.
The bride of Borat.
The bride of Borat. And I love how this works because if they're both half human and half Brontosaurus, then by Mendelian genetics, when they have kids, if they have 4 kids, one of their kids should be a pure human, 2 of their kids should be half human, half Brontosaurus, and one of their kids should be full Brontosaurus. So I'm actually in favor of this plan. I want to see those kids.
Yes. Peri is not so much in favor of it. And the doctor points out that what if the Borat, the Morlock, kills Peri before the merger can happen? Well, that's the price you pay for the carful version of Tinder, I guess. So when the Malin stands up to Borat's plan to convert everyone on Carful to such as himself, he steps right in front of the Borat's weapon so as to make it easy to kill him. I disagree with this, and I will stand here right where your ray beam is pointing that I've seen you use before. Instead of shooting him in the back.
The doctor, he turns into a collapsible skeleton.
Yes. Halloween's coming. So the doctor finally activates the time crystal, and Herbert, watching from above instead of going away as you're supposed to, sees the doctor through the time telescope.
By the way, all this dialogue about becoming half Brontosaurus, that's the Island of Dr. Moreau part.
Yes, right.
Whereas the TARDIS is the time machine part, and the Morlocks are also the time machine thing.
Yes. So the doctor uses the time crystal to absorb the time acceleration weapon energy and beams it straight back at the Borat, who is apparently killed.
No. Well, at this point, yes, apparently.
Apparently, yes. So the doctor sends Herbert to go find Peri in the tunnels while he tries to release her from the device from the control room, and Herbert manages to rescue her from the Morlock. Meanwhile, the Bandril have fired their weapon that will kill everyone on the planet.
By the way, in the confrontation with Borad, the Doctor is like, I really wouldn't fire that weapon at me. It would be a grave mistake, and you know what's coming. It's
Right.
gonna, like, this is what's gonna kill him. And it's like, oh, where have I seen other doctors doing that? Why? Dr. Ruth did that. Exact same thing. I'm begging you not to pull the trigger on that gun you're holding. And the 7th Doctor did that. It's like, oh, Davros, I'm telling you, don't use the Hand of Omega. And it's like, okay, this is a recurring trope of the Doctor begging people not to use weapons that will destroy them.
Yes. Although in this case, it doesn't destroy the Bandril, but it's...
He meant it to.
Yes.
The Borad.
Yeah. The Doctor does demand the ambassador to speak to him, since he says, I'm a Time Lord and president of the High Council of Gallifrey. So is he president at that point? Okay.
Well, yeah, but he ran away from the office.
Okay. So he wants to use the honors of the office without actually having to carry them out. The Bandril requires that in order to, okay, sure, show us the Borad as proof that you've overthrown him, which they can't because he's
he's dead.
The Doctor gets in the TARDIS.
I like that they're reasonable, though. It's like, okay, fine, we'll call off our missile. Just show us the proof.
Yeah, right. So because I wouldn't, just go on your say so. So the Doctor goes to get in the TARDIS to go stop the Bandril weapon, and Peri follows, and Herbert sneaks in behind them because, he's apparently invisible. And the Doctor wants Peri to stay because he's going to destroy the missile. And while she's arguing with him to go, like, they have this long argument back and forth. The missile's coming, but we're going to just stay here and argue back and forth instead of just throwing her out.
And part of the argument is the Doctor saying every second we waste now brings Carful into greater danger.
Right.
So there's two
argue.
problems here. Number one, you're wasting time arguing. Number two, you're in a time machine.
Yes.
You've got all the time you need.
Well, and Herbert brings up this. Because once Peri's gone, he starts arguing with the Doctor, and it says this, like, you're in a time machine. Well, why can't you just, go back in time? There are time laws that I'm not allowed to break, and that's it. Like, okay. And then so the Doctor tells Herbert that the TARDIS will act as a deflector of the weapon, and they will be killed.
But he's lying, and he's planning on dying, actually.
Right. Well, he says that when he said they'll be killed, like that he and Herbert were going to be killed.
Oh, I see. Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. So back in the inner sanctums, they all think that the Doctor's dead, that the weapon hit it and exploded and destroyed the TARDIS. And Peri goes off to grieve, but is grabbed by the Borad, who, like all supervillains, isn't dead when you think he's dead. He's suddenly alive again. At which point the Doctor now arrives and gets the Borad to admit that he's the other Borad is dead, but he cloned himself, and so that's how he's still alive.
And apparently the other one was the clone, so this is the real Borad.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes absolutely sense. They then engage a debate over whether Peri would find him repulsive if she could see him, because he's holding her in such a way that she can't see his face.
Yeah.
Which gives the Doctor time to smash his portrait of the Third Doctor and reveal a mirror underneath that he somehow knew was there.
What interesting architecture. I mean, first they have a mirror, then they put a portrait of the Doctor over a mirror, then they put some ordinary wall, like, I don't know, paneling over the Doctor picture.
Yes. It's all very convenient. So Peri sees the Borat holding her. She screams, Borat recoils, and the Doctor pushes him into the Time-lash. When he lands
Borat
in the 12th...
has really bad dating skills.
Yes, he does. And
he also threatens to put out both of Peri's eyes, so she can't see him.
Right, and that way she'll really love him at that point. Yes,
After he puts out her eyes, sure, who wouldn't?
So, and the Doctor says that when the Borat lands in the 12th century, he'll be in Scotland, near Inverness, near Loch Ness, and so he'll become the Loch Ness monster that we've already established in Doctor Who was actually a creature of the planet from the
a Scaracin from the Zygons.
Right. So how could he be the Loch Ness monster?
I like how they've set it up, because he's supposed to be freakishly strong. He's supposed to have a freakishly long lifespan. So he does kind of fit. There could be 2 Loch Ness monsters.
Maybe there could be. I guess that's true. We just don't know. And maybe some love will blossom between the Borad
maybe
and
he'll
the
get his
Scarison.
wish. He just needs to go to the 12th century Scotland to find his girlfriend, who will be all dinosaur.
Right. And the Scarison may be one of those, like there's the 2 half children, the one fully human, and the Scarison is the other one. Okay. I'll go with that. So, gosh, because why not? So the Doctor destroys the Timelash, apparently stranding all the people who've been thrown into it as punishment. Couldn't go get them first, but whatever.
I know, he doesn't really explain why he does that.
Well,
and he also doesn't explain why he's not blown up.
Yes, I was going to say that he also doesn't tell us how he and H.G. Wells survived. Like, hello.
I love how when they think they're about to die, H.G. Wells is like, I didn't realize dying heroically was such a strain on the nerves.
Right. Nice understatement there.
Also, there are apparently no lifeboats on the TARDIS, which is really bad design. That's a serious design flaw. You got a ship and no lifeboats.
That is a huge, which comes up throughout the 50 plus years, almost 60 years now of Doctor Who. So yeah, he's got to fix that at some point. So, and this is where the Doctor at the very end reveals that Herbert had dropped his calling card, and it says Herbert George Wells, H.G. Wells, and that's who he really is and where he's gotten all his ideas, etc., etc. Because the Doctor is the source of all great Earth literature in English, apparently, including Shakespeare. And that's how we end things with this one. Any final notes on this, Jimmy?
Well, I thought it was actually pretty enjoyable. It was faster moving for the most part than a lot of stories. So it did have like the Giant's Causeway Crystal Timelash sequence crawling around that was kind of long. But for the most part, it was pretty fast moving. The Doctor and Peri were not as annoying as they often are, in part because they're separated.
Yes.
For so much of this story, they don't have the chance to be sniping at each other. And I don't really mind if, Peri is sniping at the bad guys who are like torturing her and leading her around by the neck. So it provides more of an excuse for her to complain if someone's leading you around by the neck. Also, there's an unintentional irony in the script where at the end where the Doctor is telling Borad that he doubts Peri is going to agree to be his girlfriend, and once she sees him and it's like, well, I'll put her eyes out. It's like, yeah, but you can't change the brain in her head. Well, guess what? There's a story coming up in Trial of a Time Lord called Mind Warp that focuses on the Doctor changing the brain in Peri's head. And so yeah, actually you kind of ironically can, although they weren't envisioning that at the moment this script was written.
Yeah, right. All right. So, Timelash is, I mean, there are plenty of things to criticize, but yeah, it's better than some. So
yeah,
just leave it at that. We do have some feedback I want to get to from listeners. We had one piece that several people have brought up. We've been not only covering the classic Who, but in the new Who episodes we've been covering, we've moved from the 10th Doctor to the 11th Doctor. And some folks have asked, hey, you skipped the 11th Doctor's first story and the 10th Doctor's last story, the regeneration and post-regeneration. And for those listeners who are relatively new, we actually did cover all of the regeneration episodes and all of the post-regeneration episodes in a series of our episodes of our podcast a couple of years ago. So if you go back into our archives, I put a link on our Facebook page in the underneath the Beast Below episode. So if you go check that out, we did cover the 11th hour previously, so you can go check that out.
Yeah, and we're kind of past that at this point, so folks can go do that. But for the future, I think given that we did hear from a number of people who wondered about that and didn't know that we'd done those previous series we did a series on all the regenerations. And then we did a series on all the first stories after the regeneration.
Yeah.
That's good, actually. It means we picked up new listeners.
Yep.
So that people weren't aware of that. But it does make it a little bit inconvenient. I would suggest that in the future we consider either just going ahead and doing a second review of those stories, or at least dropping the previous ones we did into the feed as bonus episodes so that the listener won't have to go looking for them.
There might be technical reasons why we wouldn't be able to do that, but we could talk about some way of making those available to folks in a special feed or something like that we can do that you can be able to get those easily. But even if we put links in the show notes or something like that, we'll find a way to do that for you that make it easy. So also on Facebook, Emma Kroik writes about the Rory at Home short. We were talking about Amy and Rory, and there was a Doctor Who lockdown special on the Doctor Who YouTube channel where they did a bunch of special, and we saw one with Arthur Darvill as Rory back recording a video diary back in the 40s with Amy, where they ended up, and we mentioned their son Anthony, and she says, I thought that Anthony was their adopted child since Amy was unable to have more children after her daughter River. I thought that this was confirmed in deleted scenes that they released a long time ago, where grown-up Anthony goes to meet Brian, which is Rory's dad, and delivers a letter from Amy and Rory, and he says, which says, we finally adopted in 1946.
So there are two ways I can think of to deal with that.
Yep.
3 really. Who says they can't have more than one kid?
Yep.
You know,
that's true.
Maybe it turns out she could have kids, and they had another one, and they also just happen to name him Arthur. So it's like, this is my brother Arthur, this is my other brother Arthur. But the other two ways, well, one of them, time can be rewritten.
Yeah.
And anything that doesn't make it on screen doesn't have to be regarded as canon.
Right.
So if it's a deleted scene, doesn't have to be regarded as canon. But I tend to, because they did like release not an animatic, but an animation of the deleted scene, I would tend to say, okay, that was canon, and thus I would fall back on time can be rewritten.
Yeah.
Which makes everything in Doctor Who canon.
Right. Doctor Who is not especially rigorous about its canon, that's for sure. Then Sam Shackelford writes, I'm always surprised when you say things like, say you like things that I consider super campy. For example, when 13 calls the companions fam, but I don't think any of us like that. That's my...
I don't mind. I don't mind that. That's fine with me.
Okay, so maybe that was you then. Or from this episode when Liz 10 says, basically, I rule. And he says, that's just so cringy, in my opinion.
Uh-huh.
Well, there's different tastes. This,
as they say, de gustibus non est disputandum.
Right. There's no accounting for taste.
No disputing about. There is to be no disputing about taste.
I know. I am purposely mangled the translation on you there.
Okay.
but there's probably things, Sam, that you like that we would. Some of us would go, oh, how could you like that possible thing? That's the great thing about Doctor Who. There's something for everyone.
And some of the things that I like because they're goofy, cringy, campy, like this collapsing skeleton effect in this episode.
Yes, that's true. That's true. If you can't like a goofy, creepy, cringy, there's a lot of Doctor Who that's gonna go past you. So, but thank you everyone for the feedback. We do appreciate getting that.
Yeah.
And then as we wrap up, I do want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Doctor Who, including Joshua G., John S., Wojciech D., Rebecca S., and Gabe S. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. We'd also like to thank Victor Lambs, who edits the show for us every week.
Yeah.
And he does a great job. Thank you. And that's it from us. What did you think of Timelash? You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page, or send an email to drwho@sqpn.com. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the 11th Doctor story, Vampires of Venice. Until then, Jimmy Akin, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Doctor Who.
Thanks, Tom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest. And remember, the strength and intelligence of many, but hardly the looks to match.
Right. This is going to be fun.